I'm Ella, and I can't pinpoint the exact moment I realized how different I was from my sister Sarah. Perhaps it was at age 7, watching her play with dolls while I helped Mom prepare dinner. Or maybe it was those countless afternoons spent peering through the kitchen window, observing other children playing outside as I washed dishes practically taller than me. Ella, homework done? Mom would inquire sharply every day after school. Yes, Mom, I'd respond, already tying on the oversized apron she gifted me for my 6th birthday. A practical present, as she put it. Good. Now help me with dinner. Sarah, honey, you can go play. Sarah would skip away, her dark pigtails bouncing, while I strained to reach the counter. Even at 7, I knew better than to protest. She's still little, Mom would justify whenever I tried. You're the older sister. You need to contribute. Dad wasn't any different. He'd arrive home from work, tousle Sarah's hair as she displayed her latest drawing, usually completed during homework time, then turn to me with a familiar, expectant gaze. How are your grades today, Ella? Not, how was your day? Or, what did you learn? Just grades. Always grades. All A's, Dad, I'd report, and he'd nod, as if that were the bare minimum, because it was. Our house wasn't large, a modest 2-story in a middle-class neighborhood. My friends lived close by, yet I rarely interacted with them outside of school. There was always a chore demanding my attention. Dishes, laundry, assisting Sarah with her homework, despite her lack of focus, or studying to maintain those flawless grades. I vividly recall one afternoon when I was 10. I had just won first place in the regional math competition, and my parents were beaming as my teacher commended me. You've done a remarkable job raising Ella, Mrs. Peterson, she remarked. Her passion for learning is truly exceptional. Mom and Dad exchanged proud glances. Well, we've always encouraged her to read, Mom said, her hand resting on my shoulder. Haven't we, Ella? I longed to tell Mrs. Peterson the truth, that I studied late into the night using a flashlight because daylight hours were reserved for chores, that the only encouragement I received was the implicit threat of disappointment if I achieved anything less than perfection. But I merely smiled and nodded, playing the role of the dutiful daughter. Meanwhile, Sarah was fashioning paper airplanes from her failed math test in the hallway, and no one reprimanded her. That was the norm in our household. Sometimes I'd catch Sarah observing me with a smirk, especially when she evaded consequences for actions that would have earned me a lecture. You're just jealous, she taunted me once when I was 12 and she was 9, because Mom and Dad prefer me. I remember standing in our shared bathroom, my hands still damp from cleaning, staring at her reflection in the spotless mirror. That's not true, I retorted. But even then, a part of me questioned if she was right. By the time Sarah reached middle school, I had essentially become her private tutor, not by choice, but by parental decree. Every afternoon, I'd sit with her at the kitchen table, attempting to explain basic algebra while she texted discreetly beneath the table. Sarah, you need to pay attention, I'd plead, exhausted after my own school day and chores. Why? You'll just do it for me anyway, she'd reply with that infuriating smirk. And she was right. That's precisely what would happen. Ella, why isn't Sarah's homework finished? Mom would invariably demand, hands on her hips. She's not concentrating. Then make her focus. You're supposed to be helping her. So, I'd complete Sarah's homework while she watched YouTube videos, because it was simpler than enduring Mom's disapproval. Meanwhile, Sarah's weekly allowance of $20 appeared without fail every Friday. I was lucky to receive $5 a month, usually accompanied by a lecture about money not growing on trees. My breaking point arrived at 16. I was weary of watching Sarah flaunt her new clothes and gadgets while I wore hand-me-downs and couldn't even afford school lunch. That's when I spotted the Help Wanted sign at Joe's Cafe, just 3 blocks from our house. Joe, a gruff but kind-hearted man who had served me countless hot chocolates over the years, hired me on the spot. The work was demanding, waiting tables, cleaning spills, dealing with disgruntled customers, but it was mine. For the first time, I earned my own money. That first paycheck, $850 for a month of part-time work, felt like freedom in my hands. I should have known better than to leave it on my desk. Ella, Mom's voice echoed through the house that evening. Come down here right now. They were both waiting in the kitchen, my paycheck lying on the table between them. Dad's expression was stern, Mom's disappointed. Looks I knew all too well. Why didn't you tell us you were making this much? Dad demanded. I just got paid, I stammered. Well, since you're living in our house and eating our food, you'll be giving us half of this, Mom declared. It's only fair. The worst part wasn't surrendering half my earnings. It was what followed. A week later, Sarah strutted into our room, sporting brand new Nike sneakers. Look what Mom and Dad bought me with your money, she gloated, twirling around. Guess all that waitressing is good for something after all. I locked myself in the bathroom and wept. That night, I made a decision. I was leaving, and college was my ticket to freedom. My parents would never pay for it. They'd made that abundantly clear every time they discussed Sarah's future college expenses. So, I immersed myself in my studies with renewed vigor. I lingered at school to utilize the library computers, researching scholarships and tuition-free programs. Every spare moment was dedicated to SAT preparation, essay writing, and maintaining my perfect GPA. Graduation day unfolded exactly as anticipated. Another performance of The Perfect Family, starring my parents. I sat through the ceremony in my blue cap and gown, watching them beam from the audience as Principal Roberts announced my name as valedictorian. The Matthews have done an exceptional job raising Ella, he declared to the crowd. Her academic accomplishments are truly remarkable. Mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue while Dad stood tall, his chest puffed with pride. I observed them basking in the accolades, as always, nodding and smiling as other parents congratulated them on their superb parenting. What they didn't know was that I had already received acceptance letters from every college I'd applied to. I had been checking the mailbox religiously for weeks, intercepting the letters before anyone else saw them. Each congratulatory message felt like a key to a door I'd been striving to unlock my entire life. The best one, the one I'd selected, was from Riverside State University. A full scholarship, free dormitory housing, and a stipend. It was 4 hours away, in the next state, far enough that weekend trips home to help out wouldn't be feasible. I hadn't informed them yet. I was waiting for the opportune moment, which arrived sooner than expected. At our graduation dinner, Mom had prepared my favorite pasta, or what she assumed was my favorite. She never actually asked, and we were all seated around the dining room table. So, Ella, Mom began, serving herself another portion, have you considered what you'll do now? I opened my mouth to tell them about Riverside, but before I could speak, Mom continued with a bright smile. I spoke with Joe at the cafe yesterday. He said he'd be happy to hire you full-time. Wouldn't that be wonderful? You could earn so much more and truly contribute to the family expenses. I took a deep breath. I got accepted to college, a full scholarship at Riverside State. I'm starting in the fall. The ensuing silence was deafening. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Dad's face turned an alarming shade of red. College? Mom's voice was sharp. In another state? But what about your family? What about helping your sister? I've been helping my sister my entire life, I said softly. This is something I need to do for myself. Dad stood up so abruptly that his chair scraped against the floor. Without a word, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Now look what you've done, Mom hissed. Sarah simply sat there, a faint smirk playing on her lips, probably already calculating how to acquire my room once I left. That final summer at home was like living among ghosts. I worked at the cafe, handed over half my paycheck, and retreated to my room. Mom and Dad barely acknowledged me. limiting our interactions to curt exchanges about bills or dinner. They accepted the money I gave them without a word of thanks. When August arrived, I packed my bags, alone. No tearful goodbyes, no family photos on the front porch, no dad loading the car like I witnessed other students experience. Just me, my 2 suitcases, and a bus ticket to Riverside State. "I'm leaving now," I announced that morning, standing in the kitchen doorway. Mom continued washing dishes, her back to me. Dad rustled his newspaper. Sarah didn't even glance up from her phone. "Okay," Mom replied, as if I'd informed her I was going to the grocery store. The 4-hour bus ride to college was pure liberation. With each mile, I felt lighter, freer. My dorm room was small but clean, and my roommate Jenny became the sister I'd always longed for, supportive, kind, genuinely interested in my life. I immersed myself in my finance courses, relishing every moment spent learning about investment strategies and market analysis. My professors praised my work ethic, and for once, there was no one around to claim credit for my accomplishments. The infrequent calls home always followed a predictable pattern. "Sarah's thinking about becoming a model," Mom would report, without inquiring about my well-being. "She's just waiting for the right opportunity," Dad would add, dismissing my attempts to share my own achievements. In my junior year, Sarah graduated high school. Mom called specifically to inform me, though not because they desired my presence at the ceremony. "Sarah's taking some time to figure things out," Mom explained. "Her grades weren't quite college material, but we told her not to worry. The right job will come along." I reflected on how they'd pressured me to work at 16, how they'd confiscated half my earnings, how they'd opposed my college aspirations. "What's she doing in the meantime?" I asked. "Oh, just exploring her options," Mom replied airily. "We don't want her to rush into anything she's not passionate about." I graduated with honors, my name topping the dean's list. Jenny's family cheered for me at graduation, since mine didn't attend. 2 weeks later, I returned to my hometown and began working as a junior financial analyst at Reynolds and Associates. My starting salary exceeded my parents' combined income. The first, from the moment I could afford my own place, I felt a sense of liberation, a chance to finally breathe. However, as soon as my family caught wind of my job, the dinner invitations began. "You must be doing well for yourself," Dad would comment, his eyes fixed on my work attire. "We're so proud," Mom would chime in, immediately segueing into yet another anecdote about Sarah's latest job interview or modeling opportunity. Sarah, meanwhile, would remain glued to her phone across the dinner table, perpetually searching for the right opportunity. At 19, she hadn't worked a single day, yet somehow that was perfectly acceptable. It was me they looked at with expectation, subtly hinting at bills and home repairs. "The property taxes have increased so much," Mom would sigh. "It's hard to make ends meet these days," Dad would add, so I started giving them money. $500 here, $1,000 there. But their hints persisted, their expectations escalating with every deposit. The more I gave, the more they seemed to want, as though I was atoning for the transgression of leaving, of building my own independent life. The day I received a promotion to senior financial analyst, I made the mistake of sharing the news with Mom during our weekly call. Within hours, she had orchestrated a celebratory dinner at their house. "We're so proud of you, honey," Mom declared, but her voice carried that all too familiar tone. "It's wonderful that you're doing so well, especially since things have been so difficult here." Right on cue, Dad let out a heavy sigh. "The company's making cuts again. They've reduced my hours. And these bills," Mom added, producing a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket, her eyes already brimming with tears. "I just don't know how we're going to manage the utilities this month." I glanced at Sarah, still engrossed in her phone, clad in designer jeans I knew Mom and Dad couldn't afford. I wanted to point out that a 22-year-old capable of spending hours creating dance videos could probably manage a job application or two. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed them down. Then Mom dropped the bomb. "You know, Ella," she said, reaching across the table to pat my hand, "we've been thinking. You're spending so much on that apartment of yours. Why don't you move back home? You could save money, and we could help each other out." I felt like I was 16 again, watching my hard-earned money vanish into their pockets. The thought of sacrificing my peaceful apartment, my independence, my space, it made my stomach churn. But as I opened my mouth to refuse, I saw the familiar guilt-inducing expressions on their faces. "Okay," I heard myself say, and watched their faces light up with joy. A week later, I was back in my childhood bedroom. The room felt smaller than I remembered, or perhaps I had simply outgrown it. I laid down my conditions swiftly. "I'll contribute to the bills and groceries, but I won't be cooking or cleaning." I did enough of that growing up. Mom agreed instantly. Too readily, in fact. It wasn't until I heard Sarah's outraged shriek the following day that I understood why. "What do you mean I have to clean?" she wailed. "I don't even know how to use the vacuum cleaner." "Well, it's time you learned," Mom replied in a far gentler tone than she'd ever used with me about chores. "Ella's helping us financially, so you can help with the house." I watched from my doorway as Sarah begrudgingly pushed the vacuum around, barely making contact with the carpet, muttering under her breath about the injustice of it all. She'd later post passive-aggressive Instagram stories about forced labor and unfair treatment, but I couldn't bring myself to care. After all, she was still living off my money, my grocery payments, my utility contributions, my rent equivalent that mysteriously never seemed to alleviate my parents' financial strain. The least she could do was learn to clean a bathroom. "Ella, have you noticed how shabby the house is looking?" Mom casually remarked one morning over coffee. "The paint is peeling, and that wallpaper in the living room?" Dad chimed in immediately. "The bathroom fixtures are pretty outdated, too. Sure would be nice to give this place a facelift." I knew what was coming. 3 days and several hints later, they finally asked outright if I would help with some home improvements. By help, of course, they meant pay for everything. I ended up spending nearly $30,000 on repairs and renovations. New paint throughout the house, updated bathroom fixtures, modern kitchen appliances, hardwood flooring to replace the old carpet, and fresh wallpaper in every room. I even had the exterior painted and the garden landscaped. The transformation was remarkable. The house looked like something out of a home improvement magazine. And suddenly, our house became the social hub of the family. "You must come see what we've done with the place." Mom would gush on the phone to relatives and friends. "We've made such wonderful improvements. We. I'd sit silently during these gatherings, watching Mom and Dad beam with pride as guests praised their beautiful home and excellent taste. Not once did they mention that I had funded the entire renovation. Not once did they acknowledge that their improved lifestyle stemmed from my bank account. As Christmas approached, they planned their biggest gathering yet. Mom invited every relative within driving distance, plus all their friends. "It'll be perfect," she kept saying. "Everyone will see how well we're doing." I spent a fortune on gifts for everyone, including a new laptop for Sarah. Christmas morning arrived, and the house was overflowing with guests, admiring the renovations and enjoying the catered meal, which, naturally, I had also covered. When it came time for gift giving, I watched Sarah unwrap a brand new iPhone from our parents, complete with all the accessories. Her squeal of delight probably echoed to the next block. My gift from them? A drugstore bath set, the kind you grab last minute when you've forgotten someone. I didn't comment, simply smiled and thanked them. Then I watched as everyone opened the more expensive gifts I'd purchased. No one seemed to notice the disparity. No one seemed to care. As the party wound down, Mom cleared her throat for an announcement. "Linda and her kids are staying with us for a few days," she said, gesturing to her out-of-town friend. Linda smiled warmly, her 2 teenage children looking weary from the long drive. That's nice, I replied, already envisioning the cramped living room with 3 extra people sleeping there. But Mom wasn't finished. Ella, you'll need to clear your things out of your room. Linda and the kids will be staying there. I stood there, stunned, trying to process what I'd just heard. Linda and her children shifted uncomfortably, clearly picking up on the tension. They can stay in the living room, I suggested, striving to keep my voice even. We can set up the pull-out couch and bring in the air mattress. Don't be ridiculous, Mom snapped. They're guests. We can't make them sleep in the living room. They'll be uncomfortable there. The irony of her concern for their comfort hit me hard. And what about my comfort? I asked, feeling my face flush. Did you think about that at all? Dad waved his hand dismissively. Stop making a scene. Just pack your things and move to the living room. It's only for a few days. I looked around at the house I'd renovated, at the Christmas decorations I'd paid for, at the presents I'd bought. Something inside me snapped. Why can't they stay in Sarah's room? The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's head shot up from her new iPhone, her jaw agape. Mom and Dad exchanged a look as if I'd suggested setting the house on fire. I can't believe you'd even suggest that, Sarah sputtered. That's completely out of the question, Mom stated firmly. Why? I pressed. Why is it okay to displace me but not her? Mom's face turned crimson. You're embarrassing me in front of my friend, she hissed. This is not how we raised you to behave. If you can't show proper respect in this house, Dad thundered, then maybe you shouldn't be here at all. Get out, Mom added, her voice shrill. Get out, until you learn some manners. I looked at them, really looked at them, at Mom's self-righteous anger, at Dad's red face, at Sarah's smug little smile. Not one of them seemed to remember or care that I was the one who paid for the roof over their heads, the food on their table, the presents under their tree. I didn't remind them. Instead, I walked upstairs to my room, the room they wanted to give away like it was theirs to give. My hands were steady as I packed my suitcase, as I made calls to find a hotel or hostel with vacancies on Christmas night. The Paradise Inn, a small hostel on the edge of town, had 1 room left. I booked it immediately. 20 minutes later, I walked down those beautiful hardwood stairs I'd paid for, carrying my suitcase. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody said a word. Sarah just smirked and went back to her new iPhone. The Paradise Inn wasn't much. A small room with a lumpy bed and a shared bathroom down the hall. But it felt more like home than my parents' house had in years. I spent New Year's Eve there alone, with Chinese takeout and my laptop, searching for apartments. I found a 1-bedroom in a modern complex across town, far from my parents' neighborhood. My phone buzzed constantly those first few days, texts and calls from my parents and Sarah. I didn't read or answer any of them. I bought furniture I actually liked, not just what my parents would approve of. Painted the walls colors I chose, created a space that was entirely mine. 2 weeks after I moved in, Mom finally caught me off guard. I answered my phone without checking the caller ID, a mistake I wouldn't make again. The utility bills are due, she said without preamble, her voice sharp and demanding. Linda and her kids are gone now, so you can come back. Your room is waiting. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. No hello, no apology, just another demand. No, I said quietly. What do you mean, no? Or she sounded genuinely confused, as if the possibility of my refusal had never occurred to her. I mean, no, Mom, I'm not coming back, and I'm not paying your bills anymore. There was a moment of stunned silence, then the explosion I'd been expecting. How dare you, she shrieked. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By abandoning your family when we need you? I let her rant for a moment, listening to the familiar guilt trips and accusations. They didn't touch me anymore. You've made it very clear how you really feel about me, I said, when she paused for breath. You've shown me that I'm nothing more than a checkbook to you. Well, That checkbook is closed now. Don't call me again unless you're ready to treat me with respect. I hung up before she could respond. The calls and texts intensified. Following that final call, the barrage intensified. Dad left voicemails filled with pronouncements about family duty. Sarah sent manipulative texts detailing how she was suffering due to my selfishness. Mom alternated between fits of rage and tearful guilt trips. I blocked them all. Weeks turned into months. I immersed myself in my work, earned another promotion, and started taking yoga classes. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard snippets of what was happening back at my parents' house. They were struggling to pay bills, a first in years. Sarah had been forced to take a job as a cashier at the local supermarket, the kind of unglamorous work she'd always sneered at. Apparently, she was terrible at it, constantly calling in sick and complaining about having to stand all day. Mom and Dad, meanwhile, were telling anyone who would listen about their ungrateful eldest daughter who had abandoned them in their time of need. They spun elaborate tales of all they'd sacrificed for my education, none, and how they'd supported my career, they hadn't, and how I'd betrayed them as soon as I'd achieved success. Some people believed them. Let them. The truth was, I'd spent 25 years being the person they wanted me to be, the dutiful daughter, the responsible one, the family ATM. Now, it was time to be myself. The ironic thing is, I'm actually grateful to them now. Not for the years of manipulation and control, but for that final Christmas night when they pushed too far. Sometimes, you need to lose everything to find yourself.